Yeah, my project is called the Elder Community Cost Optimizer. I generated this PowerPoint for the most part using Gamma because that's what was recommended by the program. So yeah, so basically the goal of this project is to kind of, I noticed a lot of elderly people in my community were kind of feeling, lost with, the kind of new technology that's come out, how to pay their bills. And not only that, but they've been paying too much and they have some useless subscriptions. So, yeah, so I built this to kind of mediate this issue. Um, it's because not only that, but they also, you know, since they're the elderly, they also deserve to kind of have, an easier time doing things. And I thought that, this program that I could create would definitely help, with this issue. Because it's a widespread issue. I came to find out through my research. So yeah, this kind of tackles the overall problem that's there, which is that, most seniors pay, up to 40% more than they could for things like, internet, water, and, electricity. And they're not really sure how to mediate that issue, right? They're not really sure how to, what the comparison is, what they can do. And not only that, but it's also inaction that kind of, they're not able to take action because all these current things out there are kind of too complicated for them. So as you can see here, you know, 2,400 is the annual overspend by seniors on, these kind of things. And, with that money, they could be investing it, they could be, it's very valuable money. And I think that, this overpaying that there is currently can easily be resolved with my application. So it's, I thought it was a very, very large issue. So the solution is pretty simple, as I envisioned. Uh, I kept this application fairly simple and simple looking. I want to emphasize that because it may look, pretty, basic, but I really wanted to do that in order to kind of have the elderly not be confused by, because one of my neighbors, I remember one time they asked me how to kind of stop playing music, and it was just a YouTube video, right? So they don't know how to handle these types of things. So I wanted it to be as simple as possible. So you just enter in your zip code, you input what you pay currently, and your providers, which you get to choose based on uh, production from the zip code, but I'll explain that later. And you kind of get the a simple plan of what to do next. So step one, it asks kind of where do you live? So um, it searches, based on the zip code you enter, it searches for what providers of different services are in that area. That was especially challenging to kind of implement because, how is it, what database is it going to access and everything. And then it kind of asks you, what are you currently paying? You can select which provider you use, and if it's on that list, you can kind of enter in a supplemental supplemental provider, and it compares basically the cost from what it expects based on its data, what it expects you to pay, and what you are currently paying. So, and then the simple third step is kind of, it it generates your savings plan, which is also kept kind of intentionally simple in order for the, kind of the elderly not to be confused. So yeah, so I'm going to show you basically um, really how the application is. So this is the application. Again, it may look kind of, it may look pretty simple, but it's intentionally kept this way in order to demonstrate, the simplicity that the elderly kind of deserve. Okay. So yeah, this is the home screen. So if I press go, then the first step from before is kind of shown here, where if you enter in your zip code, like if I put in like this kind of zip code, it will find kind of the local providers in the area. It may take a few seconds, but this kind of program is kind of what I want to, make to benefit my community, like through this kind of. So if you see here, this is step three. So based on where I was, it found these, I put in a Pennsylvania zip code. So it found these providers through its data and through the AI in the background. It kind of searched through and found these specific providers, which you can select for each of these. You can add as many bills as you want, and it'll analyze them later. You can also remove them. So as you can see here, it found the kind of the rate that it could identify from here. So it identified that you can be paying $20 per month for Verizon for the home internet. And also if I go to electricity, electricity Pico is kind of the local Pennsylvania thing, which is why it kind of identified that from the zip code. So it identified that it costs $45 per month. So if I say, for example, that they currently pay, $60 per month, then it would really, have that capability. And also, if, there's another provider that I'm not really sure, and it just recommended, putting in, I put in this, right? And I say I currently pay 20. It also adapts to kind of new different data that it kind of, can take in. So if I generate a savings plan here, it identify that I could be saving $15 per month, and it'll provide a kind of comparison once it generates the plan. But yeah, so this is really my, what I decided to make with the BetterMind program. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, even though the program is very simple, I understand that you have used an empathetic point of view. So that's really nice. And I mean, the first when I saw your problem statement, my only question was why to make a digital product for the elderly if they are suffering with digital products, right? But now when I see it that it's so simple, it makes sense. Second thing is, could you tell me what LLM you're using right now for this?
Yeah, I use the Gemini API for this because I thought
Okay.
the vast amount of data it has access to, I think, was kind of more important than, using others.
Yeah.
So
So how exactly is right now the monthly saving is being identified? Like, what is the logic behind that?
yeah, so basically I had the API kind of, of course, be called, and it analyzes basically what the user takes in. So like I put in like, $20 for one of them, and using that, it used the previous data that it collected from when you put in your zip code, as I showed showed before. It's able to, the API does its own research based on the company, and it determines basically through, the company's websites and everything what you can be paying, what the minimum you can be paying. And it does, like, the basic math to identify what you can be saving. So as you can see here, this is kind of the simple output that it had. So the step one is like the first bill um, that I had there. So it provides the phone number. It shows a very simple couple of steps because, again, I could have made this as complicated as I wanted, right? But I wanted to make sure that it's easy to understand, that the elderly are able to, carry this out fairly simply. And the step two is just, the other bill that I entered, it's a similar thing. But
All right.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you can also print the plan, and yeah, that's basically the application. So
Okay. The only thought that I have with this is uh, these things like energy and your internet plan can be very versatile, right? So if the elderly is paying $60, then how would you justify paying $20? Maybe the household need of that uh, the household need is of $60. So maybe you need to add slightly more context and more variables into this. That what is the energy consumption into that? So have you given any thought around that?
Well, I mean, basically what I did was a lot of elderly people. See, again, as I said before, I could have, added as many steps as I want. I could have had like, 6 steps that kind of, you can enter in multiple things and everything. Um, but again, I reiterate that I wanted it to be only like maximum 4 steps in order to kind of carry this out. Because I see what you're saying with like, the different, depends on the different plans and everything. But also like when you're calling the company, you kind of sort that out there. I think it's much easier for the users to sort it out on call with the professional at the company rather than me explaining it to them, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I understood that you're just trying to reflect that they might be paying more, and if they can pay less, they should contact whatever provider is there. So I get that. Yeah, nice
Yeah,
problem
I mean,
statement. Yeah, yeah.
sorry, what?
No, I'm just saying it's a really good problem statement.
Oh,
What
yeah.
did you see?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that basically, in terms of the technical stuff that I use to produce this, I did a lot of it by like, a lot of the envisioning by, my own personal, you know, you know, work. And I also kind of made like it looks pretty simple because I wanted to most importantly learn from making this initial app. And I wanted to do a lot of things myself. So I ended up doing that. It took more time, but I'm not one of those guys that wants to kind of, just push something out there and want to, just say that I did something. I want to actually learn how it works first before using other things, right? So, I kind of wanted to explain my thought process here.
Yeah, I mean, that is the right approach actually, and I'm really glad that you were able to do that. So, are you planning to take this forward? Like, since you mentioned you have seen a lot of
Would
elderly.
it be fine if I stop sharing my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes. So, as you mentioned, you have some elderly people who suffer from this. So, it'd be best if you know, take that feedback on the product and document everything and iterate the product based on that. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I envision, in the future that I will, first of all, now that I'm out of like the learning stage, I'm going to maybe do a few changes to the web app and, have it be maybe get a proper domain rather than just using, Vercel or anything, and like, make it an actual tangible thing that then I can reach out to those in my neighborhood and actually, yeah, do that kind of survey thing, do that kind of, outreach. That's what I envision. And not only that, but I wanted to kind of talk about something else as well. Um, so in this project, I've learned a lot, and I kind of I enjoy the Better Minds kind of the system that they have here. But there's also some things I wanted to highlight from what I experienced that I kind of want to, then I want to present something as to what I can benefit with it, right? So I think that the outreach for BetterMind, and not only that, but also the kind of the some of the learning aspects aren't as they could be, since from my experience, the mentorship, having multiple people in like the mentorship, and especially such short sessions, I think is, I found myself sometimes hard to learn with those, kind of that environment, not having enough kind of time to look at all of it. Not only that, I kind of, I felt that, the program could use some kind of guidance as to what like everyday people in kind of the US, especially young people like myself, kind of experience. So, I mean, I want to propose like kind of internship of some sorts that I could do, maybe to, benefit, showing the perspective of, I mean, specifically because I like the specifics, but I specifically want to kind of um, work on, not just marketing to younger people and on like a more broad scale for the United States market, but I also want to kind of, I also want to kind of, you know, influence the way that, learning takes place here. Because I feel like a lot of students in the US don't learn well in this format right now.
Yeah,